hard to know how you feel right now. Like, that's a tough result to take at half-time and look very different. Talk to me about how you're feeling post-match.
Tired, exasperated. Really good first half. Could have gone in probably 2. And then, I said to him at half-time, look, you're not against 10 men, you're against 11. We need the same positive approach. We just sat deep. First goal, okay, it's an own goal, but we didn't respond. You know what, Josh? Ultimately, we're the managers, and it's on our heads. All this, we are having sleepless nights. I won't lie to you. It's draining us. We're trying every trick in the book, and then when I say every trick in the book, I mean nearly 30 years worth of trying to cajole this bunch, trying to get that win out of them, which may bring 2, but we're running out of time. Spoke to the chairman, said, look, if you think somebody else can come and do this better, we've got no issues, because we just don't want this club going down, and it's heartbreaking at the minute because we're giving everything we've got.
That was Carlton Town joint manager Tommy Brookbank speaking to Carlton Town TV just after the Millers had lost their 17th league game of the 22-23 season. Tommy's mood, like that reflected around the rest of the club, was pretty bleak. How are they going to get out of this? With just 10 games to go, they were 10 points from safety. This was a team low on confidence, and it was difficult to see where the next win was going to come from. This is The Great Escape, and over the next 4 episodes we will follow that run in, those final 10 games, to see indeed if Carlton could retain their Step 4 status. For this episode, with the help of supporters and some archive footage, we're going to take a look back at the season from the opening day up to the defeat against North Shields.
So, Mel, we got transferred, much to our surprise, I think, from the Midlands to the East in the summer of 2022, having had a really decent season the year before, finishing just outside the playoffs. What were your thoughts at that time?
I think it was more a case of the unknown, really. Looking at the division as a whole, it wasn't like we'd played, obviously, in your time, a lot of the teams previously, but the trips and the geography meant that I think the whole club went into that season kind of thinking, we don't really know what to expect.
I think there was an issue from the start. As I said, we played in that league in 2018, 2019. So those of us who were around then knew it was a tough league. I know you'd seen us play that year.
Yeah.
They're decent teams up there. But the travel was one thing, the cost was another. We lost a few players, didn't we, in the summer, who, whether they'd have gone or not, they didn't want to hang around with all that travelling to do. And of course, we launched an appeal, which was futile, against the transfer. So I suspect, in retrospect, the whole club started the season at a kind of, with a feeling of almost regret that we weren't in the league we thought we should have been in, and we were in one that was going to involve 12-hour away days and trips to play better teams.
Yeah.
But
we'd got a squad assembled,
yeah.
Then all of a sudden Sean Rowley, keeper, won't get a sign, 5 others won't get a sign, and then looking back, we're begging players to stay, to show us a bit of loyalty. Did me and Mark really want to do all that travel? I'll be honest with you, it was tough.
Yeah.
And I think all season, looking back now, we was playing the card that we'd been missed out with, rather than saying the second season,
just get on with it.
Just get on with it.
And I think the opening day was a major disappointment, because having a home game, we kind of think, well, if we can get some points on the board, continue the good work from the previous season. But I mean, we were soundly beaten by Ossett on the day.
Yeah, but we went to Grimsby 3 days later, got a decent 2-1 win. And you're thinking, okay, well, we've got a win in the first week of the season. That's always a bonus.
The FA Cup.
Loughborough Students, wasn't it, that year?
Yeah, it was Loughborough Students.
Yeah, and we lost at home again.
Yeah, and we had 2 men sent off as well, which kind of obviously caused a problem as far as the following week's trip, our first trip up to the northeast to Concert.
Concert was dreadful.
It was dreadful, and I don't know whether or not the club had a thought at the time that if the journey was that long, that the players had actually gone up the night before. So, you know, all of the preparation was in place, but as I say, the result on the day was probably the worst possible.
Yeah, we lost 5-0. It could have been more. But again, you know, 2 days later, beat Long Eaton, didn't we? 2-0. And Long Eaton, of course, went up that season. Beat them here. And I don't know, the first half of that season, I thought, certainly up to Christmas, it wasn't brilliant, but we weren't that bad. It was just, there was a bit of inconsistency. We won 4-0 away at Shildon, for example.
I mean, if you take the Concert and probably the Brighouse, but then Brighouse is never a happy hunting ground for Carlton, is it?
No.
So, you know, those 2 defeats out, as you sort of say, that in most of the games in that first half of the season, you know, we were in the games. And, you know, in some cases, Sheffield at home, 2-0 up, coasting, absolutely coasting, and managed to lose the game 4-2. And Stocksbridge being the classic, as their commentary team said on the evening, you know, they were Robin Hood. They'd come and stolen the points.
Yeah.
3 shots on target, 3 goals, and on any other day, if we take our chances, we could have been 8-9-3.
But we beat Pontier, and then we beat Dunston. That was a great win at Dunston, because I've always think they're a decent side.
Go on, Niall! Go on, Niall, attack him! Attack him!
And so kind of heading into the start, the end of November, start of December, you're thinking, okay, let's see what we can do. And then we had a dreadful result here against Lincoln.
Yeah. And I think the thing with the Lincoln is that we were behind from the first minute.
We were, weren't we? Yeah.
And the lad that scored the goal would, you know, also repeat that later on in the season at Lincoln in the first minute. And I think that defeat actually set us back then.
Yeah, I mean, 4-1 was it on the day?
Yeah.
We didn't play well. We were looking to get a bit of momentum, not the stuffing out of us. I mean, we'd beaten Pontefract, mid-November. We didn't win another home game then until April.
Yeah, that's right.
And Lincoln, I think, was the first one of that run of not winning at home at all. I mean, we'd had Grantham and Worksop at home. They're good sides. No complaints about losing those games. And then we had Long Eaton away on New Year's Day, and one of the highlights of the season, which is in itself notable because it was only a draw, but Mikey Emery scoring a 98th minute penalty to secure a point, as I say, against a team who ended up getting promoted.
Yeah. And a well-deserved one. Yeah. You know, on the day, I think that we were as good as they were. In fact, at the time, I would have thought that Long Eaton were probably around where we were. They just went on an absolutely magnificent run, didn't they?
No, they're sending off that there, though, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yes. One of the features of the season. Yeah. But then we had a really poor January. I remember all the games there, but the home games were, I think, Grimsby and Shildon. They were just 2 identical matches. 2-0 home defeats where we never looked like scoring. We actually played quite well losing away at Stocksbridge, but still lost 2-0.
Yep, we did. And we were the better side on both occasions against Stocksbridge, home and away, and managed to take no points.
Yeah. But that was when you're starting, because we're in there were 4 in the relegation zone, albeit only the bottom 2 went down automatically. The 3rd and 4th bottom were in the promotion relegation playoffs as part of the restructure of the National League system. And we were in those positions, I think, by then. But never that far away from the kind of dotted line to get 5th bottom and get out of it.
But on the flip side, with the not senior cup, we'd done well.
Yeah.
We'd progressed, we'd had good results. We'd also done well in the trophy. You know, we'd beaten Hanley Town comfortably here, another step forward, and we went out to Lincoln on penalties. But
Yeah.
I mean, on the day, we were much the better side, which is probably the only occasion we could say that of the 3 games we played against Lincoln.
Yeah.
And so that brought us to Mansfield away from home. And, you know, having beaten them in the final the season before, they were drawn out first. But of course, then the idea with the not senior cup was that the professional clubs would sort of switch the fixtures. But Mansfield wanted revenge, really, didn't they?
Did.
And if you looked at the form table, then we were ripe, you know, for them to pick off, weren't we?
Yeah, they made us travel to Field Mill, which I suspect they may not have realised, but was actually an advantage to us because it was a decent pitch. We could play football. And obviously it's a proper stadium, so it inspired us. And as I remember, Malc, you'll probably tell me if I'm wrong, they included in their squad that night players who'd featured for the first team the previous Saturday.
Yes, they did, yeah. There were 5 first teamers in that team.
Yeah.
That, as I say, on the night. And Carlton were magnificent.
I mean, that performance that night belies the entire season. You wonder what on earth's going on here, losing all those games without scoring, when we passed around. And, you know, there were occasions that night when it looked like we were the professional side, not them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in some respects, you know, to win on penalties, you know, was also for us as a team, you know, after Maddo had left us, you know, it's been our Achilles heel and still continues to be so in many respects. But to beat them on penalties, and they had good support, didn't they? There were a lot of people turned up, you know, expecting us to be rolled over.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, it was good attendance. I suppose one thing about that game, which was illustrative of the season, was that we played really well, had a lot of chances, but didn't score in open play. Our goal was a penalty, scored by the goalkeeper again.
Yeah.
And that was a recurring theme throughout the season. Not scoring penalties, but not scoring goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose we then backed that up with an away victory at Tadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, they were doomed for pretty much the start of the season, albeit they did get a draw here. But we missed a penalty in that game. But
we did,
managed to score 2 goals. They were the first 2 we'd scored in about a month, proper goals. And then again, you're looking to kick on. But we couldn't put 2 wins together.
No, not at all, no. And we had home games against Bridlington and Brighouse that actually with the same 90 minutes. You know, we lost both games 4-2.
Yeah.
On both games, we got back into the game only to then give goals away at the other end.
Literally within 5 minutes.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, I think the die was cast then. I think, you know, from the start of the new year, those performances that we'd had at the start of the season where we spoke about that we were unlucky and we didn't get the points that our performances merited, the confidence seemed to go then.
We then had, I think, the Sheffield game.
That was right.
Yeah, the Sheffield game. Their goalie got sent off, within 20 minutes. So we're playing against 10 men who don't have a keeper. We've got an outfield player in goal. And we barely managed to get a shot, maybe one single shot on target in the whole game. And we draw 0-0. And there wasn't a particularly good feeling around the club at the end of that match that day. It looked at that stage as if, you know, it was either going to take a bit of luck or one of the other teams having a dreadful run to get us out of the bottom 4. And our best hope was possibly not finishing in the bottom 2 and trying to get one of the playoff positions.
And then we had 2 home games. So we had Hebburn and North Shields.
Now, Hebburn were going for promotion. They were going for the title. It was always going to be a tough one. And we didn't play badly that day, but we lost. And we never looked like we were going to do anything other than lose.
No. And interesting with that one was that their manager, who'd played for Tommy, afterwards, when interviewed outside the changing rooms, basically sort of said that, you know, it could have been any score as far as he was concerned, that, you know, they were workmanlike, but they did all they needed to do, and you know, he saw it as just straightforward, which obviously would be interesting in a few games' time.
Well, of course, we were playing Hebburn away only 10 days after that home
That's
game.
right, yeah.
But in between, we had North Shields. Now, North Shields at home was a real chance. They were in kind of mid-table, nothing great to play for. I think by then, it was already known that they were having issues with the ground grading, because I think they started a fundraiser on the website to get enough money to be able to avoid having to be kicked out of the division.
Yeah.
For ground grading issues. And we were 1-0 up at half time in that game. So you're thinking, finally, we've scored a goal at home, and finally, we're actually winning a game.
And they were down to 10 men.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah,
they
they were.
right.
Yeah. So the lad,
right.
the lad got sent off, who plays for Dunston now, but he got sent off in the first half. The one thing you would say about North Shields, though, that they didn't spend the money on the ground grading, but what they did do was spend the money on the squad.
Yeah.
And they had some really good players. And so what they did in the second half was they just went to a back three. And they actually didn't sacrifice any forward intent. Of course, they got back into the game. And by the end of the game, it was a bit basketball. It was one end to the other. And we unfortunately conceded a late goal to them and ended up with no points again.
I mean, it's one of those things, when you're on a good run and you get late winners, they seem to happen game after game, as we found out the following season. When you're on a bad run and you're losing late goals, I think, if you played football, it's just the players know, don't they? They're almost expecting that goal to go in the last 2 minutes, and that's exactly what happened that day.
And at that stage, we're 10 points adrift in second bottom. With 10 to go. And, I mean, I've got to be honest, I, like you, I'd seen every game. I'd been to every game, so I'd seen the relatively few highs and then ridden, the rest of it. But it was a case of that, can we get out of this? And when you watch Tommy's interview afterwards, I think that his interview mirrored what everybody else felt at that time.
He was very down that day, Tommy.
Yeah.
And myself, and I know lots of people, had kind of private conversations with him over the next day or two to, as much for his benefit as for ours, keep it up. Because albeit we looked in a dreadful position, we were 10 points off fifth bottom, but we were still only, I think, 6 points off third and fourth bottom. So there was still the chance to get into at least one of those playoff positions.
Yeah.
So it wasn't completely doom and gloom, albeit it was looking pretty grim.
The fans have been great. They've obviously followed us all away games. They're always here at home. The lads appreciate their support. We've just got to keep going and hope it turns around at some point. Like at the end where we've hit the bar, we've huffed and we've puffed, but we've not obviously scored. But yeah, just keep supporting us, and the lads will keep giving everything they've got.
We just had to do something to change what was going on the pitch.
But you looked at the fixtures, and we had 4 away games in a fortnight coming up.
Yeah.
And we'd actually taken 12 points from the previous 60. So it was a mammoth task